I didn't have that many friends growing up. In kindergarten, you don't really have any conception of what a friend really is. One day you could be friends with someone you just met, then 2 days later, because they're sitting in your lunch spot and won't move when you've asked them to, you exclaim that you're not friends with them anymore. That was basically how I viewed friendship in preschool/kindergarten. Fast forward to primary school, and at this point in time, now I have a better understanding of what a friend really is. I just don't know how to articulate it yet. In this time period, I made one friend. How? Well, we established a rapport with each other on the day that we first met, arguing about what had happened at the beginning of a video game, that video game being Sonic Unleashed. From that moment onwards, well, we gravitated towards each other because in one way or another, our minds were kind of alike. So much so that our friendship lasted for about 3 years. I remember being gifted Sonic Generations for my 8th birthday, and after playing it for a while during the winter break, I remember feeling like I couldn't wait to tell Samuel about how good the game was when winter break was over. That was literally my first thought after playing the game for the first time. But we eventually drifted apart after we both moved to different schools. And that brings us to middle school. I did not have any friends in middle school. I interacted with people, of course, but I would never consider those people I interacted with friends. I'd mostly spend recess alone, playing imaginary games I made up in my head by myself. I did that throughout all of middle school, right up until the end. And that's when we get to high school. I obviously had to stop doing this the moment I got into high school because in high school you're supposed to try your best to be cool, or at least be perceived as cool by the cool kids themselves. Unsurprisingly, this never worked out for me, and high school was the time period in which I would experience the most bullying. I was bullied a lot in high school, and I don't even know if I've recovered to this day. I was the quiet friend, quote unquote, that was always picked on and made fun of, and of course, I'd just take it because I didn't want to cause a stir where I was the subject of attention. And that heavily changed my view of friendship, and by the end of high school, I could truly articulate what friendship really meant to me. I won't go too deep into what my definition of friendship is, but I'll put it this way for now. Friendship is mainly defined by trust. Trust is the key factor that could determine how long a friendship can last. In other words, it is the foundation of a friendship. Now, whether or not you trust someone can be based on a variety of factors, but the one I want to talk about mainly is race. And well, as a black person, when it comes to making friends, race is something I have to be conscious of when considering forming friendships with non-black folk, but especially with white people. The reason as to why that's an important factor to consider is because of, well, anti-blackness. Like an opioid, anti-blackness is insanely addictive and is extremely pervasive throughout the world, literally ingrained into most Western societies. With that in mind, I have to be on my toes when interacting with non-black, especially white folk, that I want to make friends with. You're probably wondering why I keep emphasizing that this applies to white people the most. Well, because other non-black people of color at least understand what it's like to experience racism to a degree. They also suffer from the disease of having anti-black tendencies, but the extent to which they do is less than that of the mayonnaise pigmentation. Despite that, in social situations where it seems fit to conversate with others to form connections, I still mostly view people, regardless of racial identity, as individuals. Obviously, I have biases and prejudices, but I try to give everyone a chance because the truth is, when making friends, there isn't really a way to tell if someone is or isn't worth engaging with just by how they look. And that's why you have to have a really good red flag detector. And obviously, how you approach making friends can also depend on the context of the social situation you're in. For example, how you think about approaching folks and conducting yourself can be different depending on whether or not you're in an area or place with a predominantly white or POC population. You're not going to approach folks in an environment that is predominantly black the same way you approach folks in an environment that is predominantly white. But generally, I think it's ideal to view people individually, especially because you're not going to get along with everyone whose racial identity is the same as yours. Not all black people get along. Not all Asian people get along. Not even all white people get along. I mean, just look at European history pre-1400s. You get the point. Within the context of making friends, and this is probably the only context that you can do this in, emphasize individuality, so you don't set yourself up for disappointment when you find that the other black person you're trying to connect with isn't really on the same wavelength as you. But there are exceptions to this rule of individuality when it comes to the topic of friendships. Tyrel is an indie movie directed by Sebastian Silva that came out in 2018. The movie is about a black man named Tyler who agrees to join his friend Johnny on a getaway at a cabin in southeastern New York with a bunch of his other white dude friends, Tyler being the only black person there. Now you may think to yourself, why the fuck did he agree to this? That sounds like a recipe for trauma, and that's a valid question, because yeah, ask any black person if they'd agree to do that, and 99% of them would say fuck no. But there is that 0.00001%. Remember, there's always an exception to literally everything, and Tyler was that exception. So what happens over the course of the movie? Does it have a Get Out style surrealist quality to it? Does it have an escape sequence after he finds out that all these frat boys are secretly a part of a racist cult? No and no to both of those questions. This movie is about as realistic as it gets when it comes to its portrayal of this particular experience. It might as well be a documentary.
To do what she wants, you know, to be treated or not. I mean, nobody wants to spend their last days like in some hospital. Or, you know, if she doesn't want to go through dialysis, then she shouldn't have to do it.
The movie starts with Johnny and Tyler pushing their car down a road on their way to the secluded cabin. The rest of Johnny's friends arrive in a truck. Things get off to an awkward start when one of the guys greets Tyler as Tyrel.
Tyler, how you doing? Good to meet you.
Good to see you. Max, it's Tyler. Hey, Tyrell. Nice to meet you, man.
Oh, it's actually Tyler, but...
Oh, sorry. No, I was good.
Max. This is when he realizes he's the only non-white person at this gathering, and you can see the excitement dissipate from his face as soon as he realizes that. Throughout the weekend, he tries his best to avoid engaging in most of the rowdy festivities these frats get into, because that's really the only choice you can make if you want to stay sane in such a predicament. It's just a super uncomfortable position to be in. So uncomfortable, I can't comprehend it personally, which is why you wouldn't find 99% of black people in a situation like this. But anyway, on the first night, Tyler and the frats engage in this weird game where they imitate different accents, and eventually there's a moment where one of these white dudes has to imitate a quote-unquote black accent, whatever that means.
Okay, now this is ignorant, all right? It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
American accent.
What's that, a gay accent?
Yeah. No, but that was yourself, though, right?
Black accent. And what does that even mean?
You know what I mean. Come on.
You
have to be more specific than that. Are you kidding?
All right, my bad.
After this painful moment, he finds himself at an impasse, stuck between whether or not he should continue to engage in these activities, observing the white boy debauchery, or just not engage at all. All of this happening in his head, by the way, and eventually he's like, fuck it, refusing to engage in karaoke by claiming fatigue and heading to bed very early. He tries to read a book at first. It's not very riveting, so he turns off the lights and pretends to sleep. The next day, he tries to bond with Nico, the guy who owns the cabin, and it's just very awkward.
Hey, man.
Hey.
You sleep good?
Yeah, I did.
Good. Sorry we got loud last night, man.
Oh, don't even sweat it. I knocked out.
Bunch of loud motherfuckers.
Later, as the guys engage in competitive trash talking with one another, Tyler mostly bonds with Cosmo, a dog, which, yeah, I'd probably do that too. Except I wouldn't find myself in this fucking situation because I'm not a dum-dum like Tyler. As the guys continue trash talking, Michael Cera's character arrives, and this character happens to be Jewish, which means he's the only white person there willing to acknowledge the elephant in the room in a nonchalant, whimsical manner.
Hey, fuck you, dude. Tyler, never trust the white man, all right? You understand? They will let you fucking die in the wilderness. You hear me?
Loud and clear.
They will let you die in the fucking...
Because, you know, Jewish people may technically be white, but they are the sort of white people other white people hate, akin to Slavic or Armenian people. White with a little bit of spice is what they call it. Basically, if it weren't for black, indigenous, and or Asian people, spicy white people would take our place completely. Anyway, later on during the night, Tyler decides to drink alongside everyone else, but once again finds himself out of sync with the other guests. Now, the rest of the movie is basically Tyler trying to figure out what to do for the rest of the weekend, and it leads him to make very strange decisions, like trying to leave the cabin without a car, and that's probably the most interesting thing that happens in the whole movie.
What's up?
Yo,
Shit,
Yo, what are you
I thought
doing?
was somebody else.
what are you doing, dude? Todd. Yo, What are you doing out here?
I just couldn't sleep, John. I just needed some space. I just trying to get some sleep. So
What are you talking about?
I walked down to Sylvia's so I could get some
Who the fuck is Sylvia?
Aside from that, it's mostly a bore, but I do think that this movie has value in one way or another. Like I said before, it's kind of like a documentary, and if you want to be put in the shoes of Tyler or any black person who's been in this exceedingly rare scenario, then this is the movie for you. And also, if you want to see Michael Cera in a do-rag, well then this movie is also for you.
We gotta meet up in the city.
For sure.
I'm kidnapping it until then.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Or you just buy another one.
Yo, it's time out. Is anyone seeing this, by the way?
Yo,
But if you're looking for entertainment, this ain't it. So given the decisions that Tyler makes in the movie, one might wonder why he decides to stay after realizing he's the only black person there. And I think we can chalk it up to lapses in judgment because of how awkward it is. Awkwardness is probably the worst feeling any human can possibly experience because it's basically discomfort turned up to the max, and it's very hard to make it go away. So it makes your mind spiral, and that's probably what led to Tyler making all of these strange decisions. But even without a sound mind, I'd still say most of us would make the decision to leave at least after your first attempt at bonding with these white folk. But I also want to consider the fact that while this situation is awkward and we can make fun of people like Tyler for bad decision making, there's also an actual danger to being in a predicament like this. I want you to analyze this picture. Analyzing it for no more than a few seconds, you should notice that what stands out most about this photo is that Tamla Horsford is the only black person in this photograph. Tamla Horsford was a wife and a mom of 6 children, grandmother of 2, a daughter, a sister, a cousin, and a friend to many. And as her family puts it, so much more. According to her family, she had an infectious personality, a kind heart, and was loved by all who were lucky enough to know her. She went above and beyond for her children. They were her world, and she was theirs. Motherhood was her favorite job. Her children were her everything. She loved to dance too, and act a little shy from time to time.
At first, she didn't want to go, but she didn't want them to think that she didn't like them. And she was always like that. She was always concerned about what other people thought, or, I mean, not in that way of like what they thought of her, but to try to, you know, she always tries to please other people. I think that would be the better way to word it.
Some of her children liked football and played the game on weekends with other children at the school that they were enrolled at. This put Tamla in close proximity to other moms whose children also liked football. Given that her and her family lived near or in a town called Cumming in the American state of Georgia in Forsyth County, a historically predominantly white county, these other football moms were white. Because of their close proximity, Tamla and the other football moms conversed and interacted with each other a lot, which eventually led the other football moms to give her an invite to a football mom slumber party.
These were moms, soccer moms, I think.
No, we were all on all kids were all on the football team because
Football.
we had Jaden was, or not Jaden, Peyton was on a football team and Gavin was on the football team. They were both on feeder teams for North Forsyth.
According to her husband, Tamla was initially apprehensive about attending the sleepover, but eventually gave in to the idea because she didn't want the other moms to think that she didn't like them, especially because she doesn't like bringing about displeasure to others, not to mention that it might be an opportunity to make new friends. So she kisses her husband goodbye and leaves for the sleepover, her being the only black person attending, while the rest of the moms were all white. All of this taking place on November 3rd, 2018.
And so she left, and then she called me, I don't know, around 10:30, FaceTime, and you know, the girls were there, and the other girls were on the couch, and she was happy, you know. She was just smiling. She said, "Hey, say hi to the girls, babe," and I was like, "Hi, girls," and so, you know, we had just a little short conversation. Wasn't really about much. I just asked her if she's having fun. She said, "Yeah, it's a good time. Everybody's having fun." And I guess they were going to play a game in a little bit, and Cards of Humanity or something like that. And So me and her ended up getting off the phone, and that was the last time I talked to her. But she was happy and she was smiling.
On November 4th, the next day, Tamla's husband would come to find out that his wife wasn't alive anymore, with the police being the first to inform him about that, reporting her death as an accidental death. When he got a chance to see her body, he noticed bruises and evidence of struggle all over her body. From that day onwards, he knew something was fishy about her death. 2 investigations transpired after her death, with none of them being conclusive. 6 years later, her death remains unsolved.
Like, really drink, somebody said she was mixing Mountain Dew with, somebody at the party said she was mixing Mountain Dew with, my wife doesn't even drink Mountain Dew, and it's like, there was just a bunch of things that they were saying that don't add up. But my wife would have made it home. I can guarantee you that 100%. 100%.
She would have made it home.
Oh yeah, 100% she would have made it home.
Human beings are interesting. Relationships are interesting. If you've been paying attention, you'll remember that I said relationships are mainly based and built on trust. With that in mind, the question you must then ask yourself is, how do you earn trust? Well, in my personal opinion, it's built mainly by demonstrating that you're capable of accepting the fact that you have the ability to be wrong. In other words, you're open to criticism. That tells me that you're willing to improve yourself as a person, which thus breeds feelings of trust. In short, what I'm trying to say is that trust is mainly predicated on a non-myopic point of view, because myopic or dogmatic points of view often lead one to make decisions that indicate that they're untrustworthy because they are guaranteed to make the same mistakes one might make in a friendship, likely to a worse degree than the first time. Furthermore, I think myopic perspectives are more likely to lead one to malicious ideologies like bigotry, for example. In a nutshell, don't let your narcissistic tendencies go unchecked. And whether or not you're open-minded really comes down to the environments you grew up in, and whether or not those were conducive to cultivating minds that can critically think with emotional intelligence and empathy. And when it comes to those football moms, or the frat boys in Tyrel, and really most white people in general, they were all put on this drug called whiteness, and they've been on it ever since they were children, and they haven't been able to achieve sobriety since due to the fact that it's so fucking addictive. And similarly to how being addicted to drugs like cocaine can lead you down a very dark path, racism can too. And again, similarly to how certain strains of cocaine are more dangerous than others, certain strains of racism are more dangerous than others. And how dangerous it is mainly dependent on the environment it was cultivated in. In the frat boys from Tyrel's case, their environment was probably average white suburbia with minimal but still existent diversity, where only light casual racism could be cultivated and grown. It still led them to a racist myopic view, but the opportunity for change is easier to achieve for them because early exposure to remedies, aka exposure to non-white folk at an early age, can minimize their ability to do extreme and or violent harm in the future. Basically, if they grew up in an environment like that, they'll turn into the average moderate white liberal rather than a Nazi. The football moms, on the other hand, grew up in a sundown town that they still live in to this day. Make of that what you will. At the end of the day, friendships are complicated. In this video, I only talked about how race plays a part in friendships and the making of friendships, which probably isn't even the tip of the iceberg when it comes to all of the elements that come into play when engaging in what could possibly be a friendship. But one thing that's for sure is that the basis of one's beliefs, thinking patterns, thought processes, critical thinking skills, and emotional intelligence/empathy, all aspects that come into play when forming relationships with other humans, are all contingent on the environment you were raised in. An environment of which that has an endless amount of variables that can impact your growth as a human. Forming relationships with other humans, regardless of race, should be done carefully and mindfully.
Hold it up.
Get your face in this shit.
Make room, Johnny. Watch out, Johnny.
Get out.